All right, folks, you have heard me plug the song. It's a great film that's coming out in September. You also have heard their music, as well as, let me talk about them a little bit from here time to time, at Anthem Lights. We had the lead singer of that band. We also had the lead actor in that film, Alan Powell, with us. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for fitting us in. Let's jump right to the film and give everybody a little synopsis of what the film is about and what parts you play.
Sure. So the film is called The Song, and it's essentially a modern-day telling of the life of Solomon. I play the Solomon character in the film. He's a singer-songwriter, kind of living in his dad's shadow, just like Solomon did with David, and writes a song once he falls in love and marries his wife, writes a song for his wife that tells him to stardom, and then the film essentially is about that struggle between things of this world that sometimes distract us from what really matters and the priority of faith and family.
And it is just such an amazing tale. We're in such a great time right now of fantastic faith-based films that are diving into different aspects of challenges of life and our faith and that kind of thing. But one of the things that fascinated me about this was, this is kind of a really big take on the balance between, musical life and family itself. So you being a singer, how was that sort of for you personally? Was it just a role that you just felt like you could just step right into, and certain things that you wanted to accomplish? I mean, how did that part transpire for you?
Well, there were certainly a lot of similarities between Jed, is the name of the character that I play, Jed, and my life, and that, as a musician, being in Anthem Lights and whatnot, we spent a lot of time on the road, and we still play shows and those sorts of things. So there are many times when I'm away from my family, when I wish that I didn't have to be, or my wife wished that I wasn't, and, all those kinds of things, and then coming back home and, reconnecting after being gone for too long, and or reconnecting with your kid. I mean, Jed has a son in the film, and I have two beautiful girls myself, and so certainly it's had those struggles and those difficult conversations, and let's just call them what they are. We've had those fights, about having been gone too long, and what it means like to come back home and reconnect with your family. So there was a lot of similarity in that, and when we were shooting those kinds of scenes, I felt very right at home, and just felt like that was a struggle that that I've dealt with, and so it was good to be able to use those kind of difficult situations that I've had in my own life for something that I feel like could positively impact other people, hopefully.
Doesn't it feel rewarding to be able to sort of share that on screen now?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, we all have our experiences and the things that we've been through and the mistakes that we've made, and then to have the opportunity to put that, in a story that potentially can help people, in their own journey is very, very rewarding.
I was so blessed to be able to take my family to see the screening, and my son, who's now 18, was able to see it, and it really drove home a topic that I've talked a lot about in the house, and I've talked about once or twice on the show, and that is almost all relationships break up with sex, money, or communication. And the film deals with one of those most difficult things that seems like churches are afraid to talk about, and that is sex. There's a point in the film where Jed's faced with that moment where he's finally home, wants to be with the woman that he loves, but the rut of life, taking care of the kids, everything else, it is not going to happen. And that is just reality. But the film deals with that. Why is it, Al, in your opinion, that we can't seem to get through that fear? The film does a great job of kind of kicking in that door. So is it now maybe hopefully time we can start to talk about that, hey, it's not going to be smooth sailing?
Well, certainly we hope so. But I think as far as, what the struggle has been, at some point, and obviously, Brandon, I'm not really sure when it happens, but at some point, popular culture started to be the primary voice when talking about sex. I don't know when that happened. I obviously believe, and you do as well, that God created it, and He was the first voice and needs to be the ultimate voice. But at some point, we let that be captured in a sense and taken from us. And so now, because of that, because it's so ingrained in us in a way that sex is dirty and something to be ashamed of, as Christians in a Christian faith, for whatever reason, we just shied away from the subject almost as a whole, like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And sure, there are things that the entertainment industry does with that that we don't, approve of or don't want to be a part of. And I get all that, absolutely. But the idea that sex itself is something you shouldn't talk about, it's just not true. And so I'm very proud of this particular project. And again, I want to clarify for those people that are listening, you won't find any inappropriate material in this film,
Right.
where you feel like, oh man, I shouldn't be watching this or whatnot. But as you mentioned, Brandon, just the subject of it, sex within marriage and even sex outside of marriage, something that Jed wrestles with. There's things that are talked about honestly in this film, and that's definitely one of the things that I'm proud of.
Folks, again, this is film that I could not approve of more. I could not encourage you to go, especially if you have teenagers and older in your house, because there's the topic of drug use, alcohol use, sex, adultery. These are things that we somehow have allowed, as Alan said, we've sort of outsourced this to the world to take the lead on educating our children. And this film really helps us, I think, hopefully, connect some of the dots back to the Holy Word. And Solomon and David have these great resumes of sinful, horrible lives that God still used and loved immensely. And it's amazing that people still want to, condemn themselves and put themselves out of God's reach when these are characters in our Bible and our history that God had his arms around the entire time. And Jed is the same way. Jed's never outside of God's providence. It's just Jed's on a slippery slope, and he has to find his way back. And I think that this film had to be just such a great opportunity for you and for the crew putting this together.
Yeah, we personally, we had a blast. Everybody who worked on it was incredible, both in their talent and even more so, just who they are as people. So my whole family and I were very, very blessed to be a part of it. But on a deeper level, we just feel privileged to be a part of something that we hope and certainly are praying that God uses to impact people in a deep way on an eternal level. And as you mentioned, the story of Solomon, and I love what you said, that he was never outside of God's reach, and although he tried to push the bounds, I feel like both he and David, and certainly Jed in the film as well. The story is about the fact that you can never outrun God's grace and forgiveness and love and mercy and essentially his love. So I really think you worded it well. But it was a pleasure to be a part of, and really just praying that people are impacted by it.
The song opens September 26th, folks. You're going to hear a lot more about it from me and in the show as we get closer to that date and try to make sure we got some screenings live and that kind of thing to help promote this to some of the bigger churches and that kind of thing to get them really rallying behind this film. And, Alan, it's really fascinating to see your career make a little shift here from Anthem Lights into taking on acting as well. First, let's have a little fun. Are any of the guys kind of razzing you a little bit?
No, it was, the guys have been nothing but supportive, and now they give me a hard time now. Like if I've got something that I need to do for the film, and I'm away from the band for a minute, or can't make a show, things like that. They like to poke fun at me. They're like, oh, he's a big movie star now. He can't hang out with us or whatever.
And that's what I meant. Yeah. I know it's all.
But they've been nothing but supportive, and they're great guys, and I'm really proud of what Anthem Lights has done and what we have been able to continue to do. So I'm just hoping that we carry on doing that as well.
There's so much music in the film. It's obviously just the backbone of the story and the Song of Solomon message. Is there a certain song or aspect of recording those scenes, filming those scenes that particularly stood out for you as special?
Well, the whole experience was interesting for me because it's a very much different genre than what I'm used to. Anthem Lights I would consider to be pop music, and this is kind of Americana, singer-songwriter, even country at times, certainly where he would have come from. So leading up to recording the music, I just was engulfing myself in that genre, and a lot of Johnny Cash and Hank Williams and these kinds of guys that Jed would have grown up on. And I grew a huge respect for that genre and those individuals and the talent that they have. So for me, it was just fun to be able to kind of stretch outside of what I'm used to and attempt to exist genuinely, in that genre. So I love the music that they put together for this film, and I think that people will like it and resonate with it. Certainly hope that they will. And it was just a great experience.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. Exist genuinely in it is such a great way to describe it. It just seems so natural. It's hard to believe that that's not your main genre that you've built a career around leading into this, because it definitely comes across as just being very smooth and just transparently comfortable. I don't know if that came across as how you felt when you're putting it together, but it definitely did resonate well.
That means a lot. We worked really hard to make that the case, so I appreciate that you picked up on that, Brandon.
Going to a feature film, was there a certain challenge that you really was much more daunting than you anticipated? Is there a pace to it or anything else that was a little more difficult to overcome than maybe you thought?
Well, the hours are intense. 16, 17-hour days, 5, 6 hours off, and then back at it multiple days in a row. And that's just, that's just kind of how it works on films when you've got everybody together who needs to be together to make a film, and you've only got a certain amount of time to do it and a certain amount of budget to do it. And so, it's a very grueling process. More emotionally, I was surprised by than anything else. I mean, obviously with the film that you've had the chance to see, it's there's a lot being called from you as an actor to play everything that Jed goes through, and so just to kind of be in that emotional place. If it was a dark day, or there were scenes where Jed was going through something that, very serious and difficult. But, I'm not a good enough actor to just kind of show up on set happy and smiling, and then when they say action, just like get into that zone. So I kind of, almost like a runway, like I would kind of have get myself to that place emotionally, and really have to stay there all day, so that when they called action, I was there genuinely. And it's not easy to do as an individual, but I felt that it was a sacrifice worth making for the story. And so, that was a little more surprising, as I'd never really experienced that before, but how emotionally exhausting filming can be. But not to say I didn't love it. I loved every second of it, and it was awesome.
That's fantastic, and just a great experience for you and for the audience to get something out of this. It's called The Song, folks. It's fantastic. It comes out September 22nd. So, Alan, is Anthem Lights headed back out? We got a new album coming. Anything else you can tell us what's going on with that part of your world?
Sure. So it's going to be exciting. So we've got Anthem Lights has a new album probably coming in September as well. We've relatively switched our kind of mentality to we do a lot of content online, interacting with our fans on the socials and making videos for YouTube. And we spend the majority of our effort in that arena, which is interesting for us. I think it's something unique and kind of cool, and we feel like that's what our audience really resonates with. So that's what we've been doing. So we create a lot of content. So to that end, we've got a new record that comes out hopefully in September. We haven't locked it down yet, but it's done. I've got it in my iTunes, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. So that's coming soon.
Plug all your social media stuff so folks can make sure they can follow you and keep up to date with that when it drops, and how to connect to you guys online.
Sure. So Facebook, Anthem Lights, Twitter, Anthem Lights, Instagram, Anthem Lights Band. Personally, Alan Powell, Alan Powell 10 on Twitter, and I've got a Facebook, and we try to be everywhere that anybody is, so you'll be able to find us.
It is fantastic. We will link to that, folks. Make sure you get all the stuff that you need to make sure you're plugged in, stay up to date on what's going on, not only with the song.
And for the film, Brandon, I need to plug that as well. So
yeah, I was going to get to the film last. Let's make sure we do that. The Song Movie.
TheSongMovie.com is the website, and the Song Movie. You type in the Song Movie on Facebook, and it'll take you to the right place. And Twitter, I think, is See the Song. And we're excited to see what kind of support that we can build on the socials leading up to the release on September the 26th.
It is fantastic. And September 26th will be the day. We're going to make sure we have links to that, make sure you know how to get connected to this, get your church involved. We have group sale rates going on right now, folks. You can get in there and make sure you can get packages of 10, packages of 25, whatever it takes to get out, support this. We've extensively talked about this year. 2014 has been a big blessing for us when it comes to faith and family films. But the key is, as we've always said, is that opening weekend. You got to make that top 10 list. You got to make a big drop, make a big boom. I always go back to Collider.com, one of the biggest pop culture sites in the country, who didn't even know about God's Not Dead opening. And here we are making a big splash, and look what happened. So the way to get through to the secular world sometimes is get out on that opening weekend, make sure your church is involved, spread the word now, start planting the seed. So, Alan Powell, thank you again for fitting us into your busy schedule, my friend.
I'm excited to be here.